Okay, so here we go. I wanted to show you that in chapter 5 because that's how he walks through it. So we can see the distinction and we can see the new man, him living in your heart. So let's look at some of these. So the first one, Matthew 7. If we're going to be in Matthew a little bit, let's go to Matthew 7. The first one he calls out is he talks about this thing where he says you can actually watch and see the evidence of how people live. So again, the only thing you can see is the flesh of someone. You can see the effect of decisions they're making in their soul, right? You can see it happening. It says, verse 17, every good tree bears good fruit. A bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor a bad tree good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down, thrown in the fire. Therefore, by their fruits you will know them. So he's talking about there's some intuitive things you can see by whether or not someone is truly following me. It's not that they're good at obeying orders. It's the outward manifestation of their soul that reflects who they really are on the inside, right? So he's saying there's actually a separation, and people may not even know it, whether you're a good fruit or a good tree or a bad tree. And that doesn't mean, oh, I'm in deep crap here. I can't remember when I did something good, for God's sake, you know. Well, I'll tell you when you did. You got saved. You came to him, and he lives in you. So this idea of all of a sudden flipping our switch in our head back to the religious man and saying, oh, okay, I got to do more stuff. It's not what he means here. He's saying, if I live in you, you will want to. That's what's going to happen. Make sense? Then you get into a little further down, he separates people again, and he says, verse 24, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I'll liken them to a wise man who built his house on the rock. Rain descended, floods came, winds blew, beat on the house, and it didn't fall down, for it was founded on the rock. But whoever hears my sayings and doesn't do them is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain descends, the floods came, winds blew, beat on the house, and great was its fall. All right? So here he's got a clear contrast between people. People who understand what they're hearing and decide they're not going to do it. People who understand what they're hearing and decide they're going to do it. Right? He's not saying, like that video said with that girl, to know me is to do stuff. He's not. He's saying, I'm communicating, you're hearing, you're able to process what's right or wrong according to my standards, and you're choosing what's right. You're choosing that. And so by choosing that, you're pleasing me. You're doing what you should. Plenty of people that are Christians don't choose to do what's right. Happens all the time. We do it every day in our lives. And there are Christians who fall. There are Christians who have experienced what it's like when you talk about being saved when you're little, and then we use the phrase that's so common in America, well, I drifted away till my 40s. So what is God going like, oh, I see him, he's out there on that boat. He's just kind of floating around. No, what he's really saying is, I know what I should do and I'm not doing it. That's what he's saying, right? I have a period in my life I can remember now because I'm older that I knew what I should do and I didn't do it. Does God say, well then, you're out because you knew me, but you're not doing what I said? Is that what God does? No. No. We think sometimes people are different. Sometimes that conversion comes in a day or two. Sometimes it takes a lot of years, right? But if you know him, you can't lose him. Not because you have the ability to hold him, because he won't let you go. But this is an example, could go either way. It can be people who literally decide they don't want to make a covenant vow. They don't want Jesus Christ as their Lord. He's a great guy. He's sharp. I love him. But you know what? I'm not going to follow him. That was that girl in that video. And there's an easy way to make yourself feel good about not being a follower of Christ. How do you make yourself feel good? Judge other people. That's what you do. That's what she did. She got up there and had her 5 minutes of fame talking about what a lousy guy he is. And he never met him. She never met him, except at that moment. She has no idea what he's like. But we all do that too, don't we? We judge people, and we feel better for doing it. Then we get into this one here, where he's talking about, in Matthew 21, he's talking about this idea of children. And he says, all right, if I go to verse 28, what do you think? A man had 2 sons. He came to the first son, and he said, son, go work in my vineyard today. The first son said, I will. No, he said, I will not. But he regretted it, and later he went. He came to the second son, go work in my vineyard today. He said, I will, but he didn't go. Which of the 2 did the will of the Father? The first one who told the father no. Isn't that interesting? So did you notice the father didn't make him go to the vineyard? How did he end up going to the vineyard? He thought about it, and he realized, that's my dad. My dad wants me in the vineyard. I need to go to the vineyard. The second one said yes to God, but doesn't do what God says. How many times do you watch churches, or you see in churches where they talk about what you need to do, but yet they don't do it? Or people are the same way. They talk a good game, but that's not how they live. Imagine raising kids saying, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you, these are the rules of the house, but they're not for me. I'm the dad, I can do what I want. They're just for you, and I hope you can do them, but it's important that you do. I mean, smack him. So what is the kid going to think?
They don't actually matter.
Yeah, if the parents are not going to live by that value system, why should I? In Matthew 25 now, you have the sheep and the goats. Now he's got another one. And down here, when he's talking about this one, in verse 32, all the nations will be gathered before him. He will separate one from another as a shepherd divides his sheep from his goats. And then he talks about how he sets the sheep on his right hand, the goats on the left. And then he talks about in verse 34, when he's talking to ones on his right, the sheep, come, inherit the kingdom prepared for you, right? And he says, you know why? Because when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was a stranger, you took me in. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was sick, you visited me. He talks about the things people were doing that were manifestations of him working in their lives, right? So remember now in the video with the girl again accusing the guy on the Christian guy on the speaker, she was accusing him of not doing these things enough, right? Now, so he talks about those in verses 37 to 40. Then he looks at the ones on the left in verse 41. He says, depart, you cursed one, in the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. And then he explains, you never did anything for me. You never ministered. You never did these things, right? And verse 45, it says, he's going to answer him, as much as you did not do unto the least of these, you did not do it to me. When you read Proverbs, it's always talking about caring for the less fortunate, the widows, the orphans, uplifting the small and the weak. When you serve in the nursery, when you do these things, we can easily fall in the trap where we think we're doing it, and we feel good about it. I feel good. I've served this month. I'm tired. I'm going to go home and take a nap, but I felt good. God's saying, well, you didn't actually do anything. All you did was trust me because I told you I want people to see me in you. And one way to do that is to serve others. So you're actually merely just doing what I'm asking you to do. It's like doing the dishes at home. You know, it's all about my wife is so pleased when after she cooks a meal, she doesn't have to do the dishes, right? So it's all about my desire to make my wife relieve some stuff off of her, take it away so that she feels good that I actually love her. That's what we do when we serve. So with the Pharisees, he says, you know, you guys say yes to me, but you never do what I ask. Now, why is that true when you think about it? If anybody were really good, it was Pharisees. They're fasting all the time. They're always praying, right? They're always doing good stuff. Why would God say you never do his will? And what would it look like to do it for him? What's that? Right, so what would it mean for Andrew to do things for you, Ashley? What would that look like? Don't look at him. What would it look like for him to do things for you? So if he said today for you, Ashley, I'm going to watch sports all day. I'm going to do this for you because you'll see that I'm really dedicating my time to do this. Would that make you feel like he did something for you? No. So what would it look like for him to do something for you? It would be doing things that were important to her, right? What do you think God's saying when he talks about serving the poor, visiting in prison? It's not a list of things to do to say, I'm doing good things. It's God's heart. That's who he is. It's doing things that make him pleased because that's what he loves. He doesn't say, if you'll just watch the Super Bowl and don't miss any of the plays, I'm going to be so excited for you because I love the Chiefs. No, that's not what God does. He probably does. I think you're right. It's the Chiefs. But that's how we understand who God is, by understanding what moves his heart. And we want to do things that move his heart. So we never do things to try to get credit. We do things that will make him smile or will bring him emotionally closer to us because he can tell we love him. So we got to stop thinking religiously about, well, here's the list of things you can serve on Love KC Week, and, you know, sign up and do this. And, yeah, I better sign up, or, you know, I haven't done it in 3 years, and I guess I got to do something. No. Maybe you got something else going on that week, right? It's going to be about prayer with Christ and figuring out what pleases him. It's all about him. So you got the sheep and the goats. Then you got servants. Now in Matthew 25, he goes, I wanted to read you that verse about when we talked about how do you know the Pharisees, how do we know they weren't doing what Jesus asked. He told them, and he quoted Hosea. In Hosea it says, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. He's literally saying, you guys are all about the religious system, the sacrificial system, keeping the law. I'm all about mercy and justice. I desire mercy, not sacrifices. I desire you draw close to me in the knowledge of who I am more than the sacrificial system you're holding everybody to. And they're like, no. We're righteous. We won't even touch a sinner. If we touch a sinner, we're unholy then, so we got to stay over here. He's like, no, dude, you got it all wrong. I desire you love on people. Point them to me. Here, Matthew 25, he's talking about servants. In Matthew
24.
It's 24? Thank you. All right, so let's look at verse 45. He talks about this idea of a faithful and wise servant, and he talks about this idea of an evil servant, And in verse 48, the evil servant, this is the one who knows the master hasn't shown up yet. The master's not here, so you know what? He's going to go ahead and he's going to do what he wants to do, and the master's not even going to be aware of it. So, again, the application in our life is think about, we just went through this when we read Jeremiah 3. Carrie was reading this about him being your master and he wants you to return to him, right? Other verses it says, I'm married to you. So it's all about returning to him. This in Matthew 24 is deliberately talking about not returning to him. The evil servant just does what he wants, doesn't pay any attention to the master. Does that make sense? Then you got the two hearts. This one I'll just talk about. We went over this 2 or 3 times. We're going to be doing it again. This is the Pharisee and the tax collector. They're in the temple praying. And the Pharisee literally says, you just got a great deal with me, God, because, I fast twice a week. I pray all the time. I'm pretty awesome. I'm not like, and he literally says, I'm not like that tax collector over there. And the tax collector is in the back of the synagogue, doesn't even think he should be there. He's got his head bowed down, and it says he beats his breast. Jewish men don't beat their breast. They tear their clothes, right? Women beat their breast in the Old Testament. You're getting a picture of the most abject, lowly form of a man who's broken. And it's really neat what he says. He just says one thing. Go ahead. That's all he says. He doesn't say anything else. He just says, Lord, have mercy on me. Jesus says he's going to heaven. He says he's justified. He's in. That's it. Right? We just talked about Hosea 6, right? Mercy and not sacrifice. This guy who's the scumbag, right? He's a tax collector. He's a nobody. All he does is say to God, please, whatever you do, have mercy on me. God says, okay. Christianity's crazy. It's so simple, but it's so hard to believe. It's so profound. And then, of course, you've got the 2 criminals on the cross, completely different. One of them on the cross is mocking God, Jesus Christ, and saying, you really who you claim to be? Well, if you are, come on down and then we'll believe you. The other one goes, something's not right here. He's never done anything wrong. He doesn't belong here. And then what does he say to him? Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. What does Christ say? There's a few rules you got to follow first because you're such a bad guy. You haven't had time. So before you die, I want to just give you a little checklist. Is that what he does? No.